This is a Tesla Model Y, and in this video I'm going to attempt to get my Space Saver spare wheel stored underneath the floor. So I've purchased the steel Space Saver spare wheel rather than the aluminium one, primarily because it was quite a bit cheaper, but it has the added benefit that it's also not quite as deep. I've done a video about this which I'll link at the top of the screen and in the video description below. So the first thing I need to do before I take the car apart is just to measure how deep this wheel is, and then I know what space I've got to make under the floor. So if I lay that bit of metal across the wheel there, you can see that the centre doesn't protrude much more than the tyre, only a few millimetres there. So I've got to gain about 5 inches or 13 centimetres under the floor there. I'll be interested to know actually if you've got the aluminium Space Saver, which is typically the Road Hero one, what's the overall depth of those? Because I know the tyre is wider, those have a 155 width tyre, whereas this is a 125. But what's the overall depth of the whole aluminium wheel? 90% of the viewers of this channel are not subscribed. I'm sorry to ask, but it would help greatly if you would. Just press the subscribe button. It's free and it shows YouTube you like this sort of vehicle related content. If you want to be notified when new videos are released, please click on the bell button also. Thank you, it really helps more than you would imagine. So the task here is to get enough space under the floor there to get that spare wheel in, which will involve cutting some of this away, seeing what's under there to see if I can gain anything under there, and then the wheel will then protrude a little bit over the main storage compartment there. So you can see I've laid the spare wheel in there and I've measured it, and I've got to lower that by 50 to 55 millimetres. So that's what I've got to achieve. But you can see that it doesn't actually protrude over the storage compartment by very much, which is great because this is still going to be very accessible because I use that quite a bit. So I've made some marks where I think I need to cut. You could mount the wheel central. I'm not. I'm going to mount it to one side. I don't think it really makes any difference either way, but I've put some masking tape on the carpet which gives me some idea of what I need to cut. You could use a crayon or chalk, but that's where I think I just need to cut there, take the strip of foam out under there to lower this, cut there, and see if I can get it down lower in the middle there. I don't know what's underneath there, but that's the next thing, is to take the carpets out and see what's actually underneath and what I can gain. My intention also is not to remove too much sound insulation from under the floor there, because all of this foam under this carpet is deadening noise, so I don't want to make the car worse. So my other option, which I'm open to, is just to raise the floor bases up a little bit, and that would simply be achieved by just running some wooden slats along here. And if I've got to raise it up by, I don't know, I don't think I would want to do it any more than say a centimetre, but that would be a really easy way, and I don't think it would upset the levels of the floor too much if it was just raised up a little bit. So that's the other option, because that might be easier than hacking too much of the foam out, because I don't want to remove too much foam and then end up that I can hear the motor and hear more road noise. So the next step is to remove some trim, and you need to lift this bit up first. You can do all of this with your fingers, you don't need any tools. You can hook that bit up there, that's just clips, hold that down, but you don't need to remove all of it, just lift the corner. You can then pull this off again, it's just simple clips, and then do the same this side like that, and then you can get in there and pull that up, but I really need 2 hands to do that. So with those out, you can then pull this carpet back. This is just held on with a few Velcro tabs. This is different to some of the other cars I've seen online, because this is a newer 2024 Model Y, which has the what looks to be the single giga casting under the whole width of the vehicle there. Some of the others had a foam block in here which you could remove and cut, whereas this, the foam is all moulded on the underside of the carpet, and there's not much actually. But then if I look under here, there's a lump on the casting, so I'm not going to gain much under there. It just depends on how thick that foam is under there. So I might be able to cut a bit of foam away there and a bit there where the profile of the tyre is. That won't be removing too much foam, and this might then sink down a little bit, but we're probably only talking a centimetre or so. So I've ripped out the tub, as you can see. That's just held on with 4 clips, very easy to rip out. So you can see I've got to chop the foam out here, so it's a bit difficult to work out where I chop and what I chop actually. This is different to others I've seen online, but it's very interesting how this car is made. Obviously this is all one giga casting now, but we've got this other plastic tray in here, and then at the bottom is a sheet of polystyrene. So that's the base of the tray. It's that profile for some reason. I don't know why. Is that to give it strength? Is it to reduce noise? But then you've got this polystyrene layer on it as well. I guess this is to reduce noise. But yeah, all looks very nicely made. The other thing I've noted is there's no longer bolts along here, so I wanted to put a strap over the spare wheel to keep it down, because if you're involved in an accident you don't want that spare wheel flying up, going through the parcel shelf and then going forward into where your passengers sit. So I really wanted just to get some sort of strap or anchoring down. There are 2 bolts here, but unless there's something in the corners there, I'm not going to be able to put the strap over the wheel. But anyway, I've got to look at that. But yeah, it's not easy to work out what to cut and how I'm going to gain that bit of depth. So at this point, before I started cutting, I'm having a bit of a change of mind here. So I can't really gain much depth under that lump there, apart from about a centimetre of foam under the carpet. So I'm thinking, do I bring the spare wheel forward so it doesn't sit on that lump, and instead it sits over the storage compartment there, and then the only cutting is then here, which is going to be easier because there's no metalwork underneath. So that might be a sort of a easier and simpler way of doing it. Cut that middle bit out, it can then drop down onto there, and then it would just need a support here to support the spare wheel so it's not dropping into the boot. That could just be with some sort of timber. And then I've also then got the bolts here which I could strap it down with, but then it does ruin the access to the storage compartment there. But that might be a better way, and I just forgo that storage compartment, and what I'm storing in my frunk I could move and store it all under there, and then use the frunk as my day-to-day storage, rather than what I've been doing is using this storage compartment. So yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to mount it there. It looks a much easier job, because where that is, that's got to drop about 2 inches, and the depth of this is about 2 inches. So if I can cut that out there, the tyre will then sit on the flat floor there, and with the wheel against the fabric there's enough room for that just to get in there. It's going to be tight, it will be sitting on that chamfer, but that should then sit on that floor, and that's the 2 inches it needs. So that's obviously the easiest way of achieving this. It's just a shame that it's going to be covering over the storage compartment, but that's not a huge issue. So at the moment I've got that resting on a box there, so it is going to need some sort of support under there as well to stop the wheel trying to do that. But that just might be a block of wood and a support that way to stop that block of wood falling over. That doesn't have to be permanent, it's just going to take the weight. And by having the wheel there, there's a bolt here and a bolt there, I can put a strap over it, strap that down, and that makes it nice and safe as well. So I'm just having a look what it looks like with the wheel flipped the other way. And when it comes to cutting the foam out of this ridge, or cutting this ridge off here, you might as well cut the lot off actually, because if you had it the other way you could cut just a section out, but I think you'd still need to cut a bit out this way. And if you had it this way, this is where the wheel is resting on it primarily, or resting on it first before the tyre. So I think if you just cut the foam out of that lip from there to there, you can then have the wheel either way. Drop that down. At least having it that way, if this goes low enough here, because the steel wheel is a bit wider than the actual tyre, that will then be sitting down in the trunk storage compartment, and you won't have so much of an issue hiding the depth here. So it all depends on how much you can take out of that ridge, but that's probably the way it will end up being mounted. So I've marked where I've got a cut there and there with the tape, roughly. You don't have to be very accurate with this. So next job is to cut that ridge off. So to do that, we've got to cut this here, so this lays flat because that's part of the ridge, and cut it out of here somehow. So cutting this simple cut either side like that should be enough for that, because I'm hoping by the time the wheel is on there, that's going to squash that down and flatten that down anyway. So hopefully don't have to do too much more with that. And then this is the back of the tub, and here's my tape. So we need to take 2 inches out of this, and that's actually the depth of the carpet. So what I'm going to do is draw a line along here with a pen, so then we know how much foam to cut out. Cut the foam out up to the back of the carpet there, cut the carpet here, so then this carpet can lay flat. We'll obviously go down and then lay flat, and try to cut that foam out as neatly as I can. That's the plan anyway. So with the foam cut, you can pull that back and make sure that's cut nicely. I've cut the rubber at the top, and then you can then start peeling this foam off the rubber. Well, actually that rubber is going all the way back, so probably I'll need to cut the rubber off as well, but I think for starters I will peel the foam off the rubber and see if I can leave the rubber in there, because then that will then form part of a lip and protect this carpet as well, I think. But you can see there, that rubber there is that rubber sheet there. So I think I'll try to leave that intact and just remove the white foam like that. So with the foam removed, and then cut the rubber down there, that will then allow that rubber to lay flat, and then just got to cut the carpet to do the same. So I've cut the carpet diagonally along there, and then sort of straight up there, and the same that side. It's all a bit of a guessing game really, you don't really know the best way to do this, but anyway, let's see what that looks like. So this is the bit that's going to flatten over time, I hope, because really that wants to be flat, but naturally it wants to spring back up because that's quite stiff. But we then got this rubber that can then lay over there, and that adds a bit of sound deadening, I guess, because that rubber is quite thick, and then the carpet will then lay over like that. So naturally it's trying to push back up all the time, but I think when the spare wheel is on there, and I've also sorted the strap out, that should then find its place and crush down. So I've just dropped the wheel back in to have a look at my first fitting, and I haven't cut enough off, so I need to cut one of those sides again, which is a shame because then that's going to leave a bigger gaps and cuts in the carpet. But anyway, I should have made them a bit made the gap a bit wider. But looking at the depth, if I push that tyre down, I'm not far off. The floor is going to sit on this, and it wants to be at the bottom of that because that's the thickness of the floor. So I'm not that far off. If it sits proud by a few millimeters, I don't care. So I've got to sort that out, and then I think that might be getting to the point where it drops enough. And then I've just got to sort this out, and obviously the height of this is going to change that a lot. So I think when that's level, I might actually be a little bit too high still, but there might be a bit more I can play with in there. Yeah, I got my cuts completely wrong. I want to be right back there, so an inch off that and a bit off that, which is a shame. So my advice is, when you do this, don't cut it too close to the tyre. Leave quite a gap either side, leave yourself a bit of tolerance, because when you cut it once, it's actually quite neat, as mine is there. I haven't cut this a second time yet, but that's quite neat. So leave a big gap, cut it once, and job done. Now I've got to cut that a second time. This is all going to look a bit of a mess, but anyway, it's going to be under the floor, so at the end of the day it doesn't really matter. So I'm thinking a piece of wood like that with another bit to support it can take the weight of the wheel there, and then that will sit something like that. And as this is at the moment, that's proud by about 3 millimeters. So I don't think I need to worry too much about that, but it's spot on at the front. If anything, that could be lifted up a little bit, which might just drop that down a bit, but of course where it pivots here will be the same. But there's not much in it there, so that may well flatten a little bit. I'll have another look, see if I can gain a few millimeters out of that, but I'm not too worried. I think that's about right. So what I'm going to do next is see if I can get a strap, some anchoring points down there, and get a way of fixing that down. And then I've also got to make this support here, or whether I can even just put a little bracket in the metalwork there. I'll have a look at that. But I think before I go any further, I might snap the sides in and put the floor in and just double check it. Right, it's a good job I did do that, because I haven't snapped the sides in here, but I have at the back put the floor in, and there's a gap. So that's plenty good enough. So that works well. And under there, you've still got quite a bit of storage space. So I've just tried it flipping the wheel over as well, and it works equally as well that way round. If I just move that out the way, I've got 2 cuts here, so this isn't ideal, but you're not going to see it. It's all going to be under the floor, so I don't really care too much about that. You could use some black gaffer tape to tidy that up and cover up the foam if you really wanted to, but I'll look at that when it's all finished. And for now, that's what I've done for the support, just a simple block of wood, and that block of wood I was using was pretty much the right length. So I've put a chamfer on this end just so it sits down there better, and I think that's going to be all right as it is. If it moves, then I can put another piece of wood across there to keep it still, but with the weight of the wheel on that, I think that is going to be adequate. And then, as you can see or hear, that drops down on that nice and solidly, and that is supporting it very well. So once I get the hooks in and get a strap across there, that's pretty much done. And of course I've got all of the punch and repair kit, charge cables, compressor and all the stuff I carry in the frunk. I can put that around that block of wood, and then that's not going to move anyway. So as I can't do any more now until these hooks turn up, I've put the sides in, and I thought I'll see what the floor is like. And actually it's not too bad. It is resting on the spare wheel though, and I've got a 3mm spacer there, and that's the sort of gap we've got there, is about 3mm. But it doesn't feel too bad. And then if I get the other piece, that's flush. So I've got to put this trim back, which I won't do now because I'll only have to remove it again tomorrow, but that's feeling okay. So even though they're not completely on the side rails, you wouldn't know. There's no rocking, and that would be quite happy with quite a lot of weight on there. So this has turned out to be actually a very simple job. And all I've removed from the car is this strip of foam. So I think I pulled a blinder here by buying the steel spare wheel rather than the aluminium one, because that has been really easy to get in there. So I bought these anchor points off Amazon. These are square, so I think they're more suitable when you're using a strap than the D ones that are rounded top or the sort of triangular ones. These have got a 10mm hole. Ideally I was trying to find ones with an 8mm hole, but I just couldn't find any. These bolts are M8. Most of them tend to have a 4mm hole, or they didn't tell you what they were, so these were the only ones that I could find that were large enough, and I didn't have to mess around trying to drill the mounting plate out there. But these have got large washers, so they've actually ended up working just fine, and the washer doesn't crush the pivot point, the hinge there. So I've mounted two across there, and I've actually made a mistake with this, which I'll share. That's not where you want to put them. So I've done this, put the wheel back in, and it's not right. The strap isn't covering the wheel enough, but let me just show you that. So this is what I ended up with, and obviously I got it completely wrong. So strapping across there isn't supporting the spare wheel enough. So in an accident, that wheel would still flip up. So what I actually need to do is to strap it diagonally like that, or across that way. And the other mistake, well, not really a mistake, but the other thing I would change if I was doing this again is I would mount the spare wheel right close to one side, so cutting it off here, and then that would give you a bigger gap to access the storage compartment underneath. Where it is, it's not too bad. I can get my hand in there, and I can get my hand in there, but you're not going to be able to get much stuff down there. So putting it to one side would still allow you just to get your hand in the edge, but it will give you a bigger hole there to put stuff into the storage compartment. But anyway, it's the first time I've done it, so I'm leaving all this in the video so you can learn by my mistakes and then make a better job than I've done. So I'm going to strap diagonally across that way, and what I've also discovered is the anchor point obviously is on the bolt there, and you can see that profile there. So when you put the tub in, you would have thought that would be coming up there, but it's not. It's actually inside the foam there. So that's a little bit awkward, but anyway, the strap can come up through my cut. Yeah, it's got to sort of go through there and then tuck around, so I might have to cut it. Let me just see where that is here. I might have to elongate that cut down here more. And then obviously the anchor point here, I've got to cut somewhere here to get the strap through. What I've also done is cut the strap and then sewn the anchor points on the end with the help of someone in the family who had a sewing machine. You don't really need to do this because you could just loop the strap through either anchor point, but because the anchor points are going to be buried under the foam, under the carpet, if that strap accidentally got pulled out, you would struggle to put it back in, and you'd have to take all the trim out and take your trunk liner out again. So by fixing the straps permanently to the anchor points, it's just going to make a neater and more permanent solution. So that's what I've ended up doing. That one on that side, and then that one anchored down there. While doing this, it's felt a bit like I keep making sort of one step forward, two steps back. I keep making mistakes, but that's the point of making this video. You can learn by my mistakes, get it right first time, and end up with a better job than I'm making. So at this point, we've now got to make some cuts in the carpet. So this is where you want to be very neat, because they're going to be visible. This one will be somewhere there, but it's a bit of an estimate. That one I can feel the edge of the loop, and the loop's going that way. So on this side I think I'll just extend the cut around, and then the webbing, well, the strap can then come through the existing cut. But obviously you want to be a bit careful with this, because these cuts are going to be visible. So when making this cut, I don't really want to make it much wider than the 25mm width of the strap. So that one ended up being quite neat. This one I did extend the cut down, but actually my knife slipped when I was doing that. Had to cut the foam, and then the fabric, the carpet, was very soft, and I slipped a bit further than it needed to anyway, because it wants to be more up there. But anyway, very minor thing. So finally I can start putting it all back together and get those trims in. So that's putting the little clips back there to hold the tub down, and then put these trims back. And I must admit, I pulled these in and out so many times doing this job that the clips are nowhere near as stiff as they were originally. And then when you put this down, you've just got to make sure that the lip is underneath the rubber door seal here, and that's gone in very nicely. And while that strap's not properly across the centre, it's across the wheel enough that it would keep it down in the event of an accident. So next I'm going to cut the excess strap off and then melt the ends with a match, and then that stops this from fraying. And then that's the rear floor down and the front floor. So I'm really pleased with that. And of course this has all been with minimal modifications. That's all I've removed from the vehicle, and I've made a few cuts in the carpet. And now underneath the spare I've got my puncture repair kit. So I've got an excessive amount really. I've got 2 puncture repair kits, a scissor jack, a brace, 2 compressors. I've also got the bag that the spare wheel comes in. I could store it in the bag if I wanted to, but it's clean at the moment, so there's no point. And then this allows the charge cable to sit in there, and there's still plenty of room. And then of course we've got the storage under there, which I haven't even touched. Plus I've still got the storage bins either side, of course. These are the Jaguar ones, and I've got a review of these on the channel. So that'll do for this video. I'll put links to everything I've used in the video description below. And if you found this video useful, please do click the thumbs up. That really does help. Do subscribe to the channel. And if you want to know more about the Tesla Model Y, there's also a link below to a playlist where you can see all the other videos I've made. Okie doke, I'll see you on the next one.